Are you staying, Mike?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Shall we make a start? Great. Welcome
Yeah.
everyone to Friends Against Scams session, which is going to be run by our very good friends at British Gas. So I'll let Matt and Steve introduce themselves.
Great. Thanks, Alice. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Hope you're well. If you can see me, you might recognise me. So I work for British Gas. We've been partners with NEA for nearly 30 years and regulars at the conference. So it's a shame we can't see you all. But I think if we did have the conference and it was a Wednesday afternoon, you'd all be on your way home or very hungover. So it's good to see you all. Steve is on the line, Steve Brogden, who I don't think you can see because of technical problems with his laptop and phone. But together we're gonna be there, Steve.
Yeah, sorry, Matt. I was just going to say good afternoon, everybody. And I'm probably one of those people that would be on my way home or hungover, actually.
So we're gonna take you through for the next hour. We'll try and keep it and finish a little bit before the hour because it's the pub quiz next, and we're the walk back to the pub quiz. So we don't want anyone to be late, or you might want to get your drinks ready for the pub quiz. But we're going to take you through Friends Against Scams, which some of you might be familiar with. We've talked about it, and actually at the conference last year, we were promoting some of the work that we're doing with Friends Against Scams. It's an awareness session, really, that gives you all a little bit more of an understanding of scams and fraud. And we got associated with this program shortly after we did Dementia Friends, and as part of our vulnerability strategy in looking after customers. A lot of our customers are lonely, isolated, are elderly, and sadly these criminals do prey and target customers and a lot of British Gas customers. And more recently with coronavirus, these criminals have been using COVID as a vehicle again to scam more people. And we're going to touch on a few things through that as part of the session. It's quite interactive, although I can't see everyone. I think between Alice and Steve, there's a couple of things in the slides where please feel free to shout out the answers, and please feel free to talk to us throughout or ask any questions. Probably most of you on the session here today have been impacted by a scam. Even this week, I've received 2 emails. One, a TV license renewal, which was a very clear and obvious scam, and another very random email telling me a payment hasn't been received. Didn't tell me what it was for, but please click on this link to give my bank details. So we've all probably been associated or aware of scams. And this training session really is going through the different types of scams, how we break them down, and probably more importantly, how to look at and spot victims of scams, the changes in their behaviour, because a lot of people sadly won't talk about scams. They will feel very embarrassed if they have been a victim and they've lost a lot of money, or just generally embarrassed that they've been tricked. So it's important, and it's very similar to Dementia Friends, that the more that people talk about scams and understand scams, and really the most important thing we're going to get you to understand from this is reporting the scam. It doesn't matter how small, and to the right people, that we can all kind of get together and really kind of make sure scams are a thing of the past. So British Gas has got involved because a lot of scams that are currently happening are using British Gas as a bit of a vehicle for that, whether that's distraction, burglary, and rogue traders turning up at the door, and we'll talk about that later on, or emails that are going out, and they are very, very realistic emails from British Gas with regards to changes in direct debit or refunds. And as again, I'm sure some of you have seen these or seen other ones, quite commonly HMRC and TV license. So at the end, I think if anyone wants to share any stories and would like to talk about anything that maybe has happened to them, friends, family, then as I say, please share your stories as we go through, and anything that might relate to what me and Steve talk about. So at the end of the session, we want you to understand scams, understand the perpetrators, the criminals that are doing this, and really how we can help and support victims. And again, from our perspective as an energy provider and as a supplier, it's sadly coming up in a lot of conversations as well around financial hardship when we ask customers where their money is going, and some of them are paying in towards these particular schemes that we're going to talk about. So sadly, it's coming up in a lot more of our conversations, which is why I think it's important for us all to really understand and try and work together and join things like Friends Against Scams and educate our employees on a personal level, but also then to support customers. As I said, the reason it's a little bit topical again at the moment is because of coronavirus and these criminals jumping on the back of when we're all in lockdown and self-isolation, and there were things going on around PPE equipment and gloves and masks and solutions and cures and things like that, which people will go online and will buy and think that they're going to be saved from COVID. There's a magic cure out there, ordering masks and things like that, and obviously nothing ever turning up. So a lot has happened, and a lot of work has been done by police forces, Action Fraud, the National Trading Standards to really raise awareness of scams, and a lot of what we're going to go through is related to COVID because of what's happening at the moment, but also general scams as well. So a scam. So what does it mean? So a scam is a trick, a ruse, a swindle, a racket, but basically it's fraud, and it's happening all around us, and it's happened for a long time. It's getting more prominent because of the online world and the world we live in around social media. But they're getting a lot cleverer as well, and picking up on a lot of things that we do in our behaviours and our routines. So the average age of a scam victim is 75, but 53% of people over 65 have been targeted, but anyone can be a victim. And I think it's important to understand that. And as I said earlier, we're all getting emails and phone calls and things of that nature at times, or people knocking on our door. So basically a scam is a crime. They're done by criminals, but only 5% are reported. And that's down to sometimes people, as I said, feeling embarrassed about it, not wanting to talk about it, or not actually know who to report it to. Sorry, there's a bit of feedback there. So so hopefully through this awareness training, we'll be able to share with you, the right reporting structure to make sure we do start reporting these. Once a victim has responded to a scam, they're usually all their details are shared across, and there's what's called a sucker list, which these criminals share in the underworld, and usually when one victim has fallen for a scam, they will be shared, and they will there will be repeat visits and repeat calls, to the extent that sometimes this has been reported in various areas in the States. That once a rogue trader is successful knocking on someone's door with a scam, they'll put a little cross underneath the windowsill, a chalk cross, so another criminal walking past could knock on that door because they know that they've been successful. Someone else has been successful in the past. These criminals rely on targeting customers or people that are lonely, vulnerable, social isolation, and the shame, and basically, and we'll talk about it in a minute, it's kind of grooming in a way of getting these people hooked to respond, and dangling this carrot of something that's never actually going to happen. The stress and pain of the victimization can leave victims feeling very depressed, withdrawn, and in some cases suicidal. We'll look at that again later on. So really, this is all about together awareness and really talking about scams and fraud and really understanding them. So it breaks it down into 4 areas. I'm going to pass over to Steve now to do the first 2, and Steve can talk through postal scams.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, so as Matt said there, we're just going to run through sort of the 4 areas and the 4 main routes really that the criminals use. So first of all, starting with postal scams, and again, you're probably quite aware of a lot of these sort of ruses that are used really. So they come in many forms, and basically they are designed to extract personal details, financial information, or even money. And especially when you look at the age demographic of victims, they're quite used to still using post and sending checks and cash or postal orders. I think I've got a checkbook somewhere, but I don't know when the last time I used it. But again, like I say, with that customer or that person demographic, they are used to using the post, maybe sometimes more than email. So some examples of that then are lottery or prize draw scams. And that's where they're claiming that the victim has won large amounts of money on a fictitious lottery or prize draw. and usually they're Australian lotteries or Nigerian lotteries. And as Matt mentioned, you know, from a British Gas perspective, we come into contact with some of these customers that actually are falling victim to these scams. We had a customer that was in severe financial hardship that actually thought he was going to win the Nigerian lottery. And as part of us rolling out this program, we were able to identify that it was a scam, because he'd been saying it to us for quite a few months, and the agent had just thought, okay. But obviously then we were able to report that and get him some help. Catalogue scam, so that's where it's selling worthless or misleading products, so home garden products, miracle cures and vitamins, and also claiming that the victims won money or non-existent prize draws. And so basically saying to them, you know, unlocking your winnings, you just need to make a purchase, and then you've won thousands of pounds or whatever. Clairvoyant scams, and that's where it's offering prediction of the future and requesting payment for further information. And that's becoming more prevalent online as well, and via telephone scams. And then inheritance scams, and I've had an email or a letter about this in the past, where an overseas lawyer is saying, you know, you're entitled to a load of money from a recently deceased individual that's been left to you in the will. And then if you just look at the slide, there's just some hints and tips there around, you know, how you can make a stand against mail scams. So never sending money to a company in order to claim a prize or winnings. Watching out for letters with too good to be true offers. So if it is too good to be true, then it probably isn't. Not disclosing personal information to people or companies that you don't know. And if you are getting a lot of mail, get a trusted friend or family member to help sort through it. And as Matt kind of mentioned there, if somebody falls victim and you know, forms part of this supper list, then they will start getting increased amounts of letters coming through. And if you think the letter is a scam, then report it and shred it. And again, just to reinforce, that's what it's all around, is just getting people to report scams. Thanks, Matt. And then moving on to telephone scams. So quite obviously, that's communication made by telephone. Used by scammers is very effective and easy method, because again, that's catching people that may be in a rush, or maybe, you know, trusting that it's an individual like from a bank or something that's contacting them. And again, that's to obtain personal details and or financial information. Going through some of these with some of the weirdy words. So vishing, and that's a telephone call is used in an attempt to steal personal information. Smishing or SMSing, and that occurs when mobile phone SMS text messages are used. Again, an attempt to scam the victim into divulging their personal information. Investment or boiler room scams, and that's where a telephone call is offering worthless, overpriced or non-existent shares. Pension scams, again, telephone call lures people to cash in their pension with promises of upfront cash, guaranteed returns and one-off deals, and that's been quite prevalent over the last few years around people taking more control of the personal pensions. And computer scams, and again, that's a telephone call stating there's a problem with the victim's computer or laptop, and basically offering help to get that issue resolved. And again, as I said on previously, if you look at the slide there's again some hints and tips how you can take a stand against telephone scams. So never giving out personal or bank details over the telephone. Not feeling pressured to make a decision over the telephone. So, you know, if you're not sure, then if it's a bona fide individual, they'll be quite happy for you to phone them back. If the caller is vague about giving out company information, then just hang up. And don't open texts or answer calls from unrecognisable numbers. And again, it might be something you want to consider yourself, or if you're speaking to clients or customers or even family, friends or relatives, is consider a call blocking device to filter out unwanted calls. And a lot of organisations, including trading standards, will provide these free, and that will give that person an understanding as to, you know, make sure that they're only getting calls from trusted people.
Cool, thanks, Steve. The next one is Doorstep Scams, so distraction, burglary, rogue traders, and this is really where criminals pose as legitimate business people, trying to sell goods or services. Only yesterday I was talking to the police in Thames Valley, because in that particular area at the moment there are rogue traders or distraction burglars pretending to be British Gas. A very common one is people saying they're from water companies, because when they come into properties for water, they might send somebody upstairs to turn on a tap, whilst downstairs, all they're doing is emptying out the house. So again, it's something that's the police are doing a lot of work on, and trying to protect, and they do again target and prey on lonely people. And that can be again for services and goods, where they might come and actually quote to fix your roof, or mend things, or mow the lawn, or do your driveway. Again, usually for a price that is a lot more than what actually the work costs. So it's always good to just make sure that you're getting any works done by someone that has a history and is reputable from a direct like checker trade and things like that. So it's always important, again, as we just seen the other one, some tips to use a door chain. Don't trade on the doorstep. Always ask a trusted friend or family member for advice on reputable traders. Display a no cold calling sticker outside your door, and just again, always report any suspicious activity, and make sure it's reported. And the final one is online scams. So online scams, at the moment, because of the world we live in and how much we use social media and technology, it's the one area that is seeing a significant increase in scams and fraud. I think we've all seen the news recently on various organizations that sometimes maybe get hacked, and some of our data that's at risk from criminals getting hold of. The most recent one, I think, was the EasyJet breach. So it's a big problem, and it can be broken down into 4 areas. We have phishing, which is basically emails from your bank or building societies, and they're trying to get you to pass on personal information like passwords or details. Then there's farming, which is the fraudulent use of directing users to a fake website. So the website will look very realistic, but actually when you look at the actual website link, the HRL, it's nothing like the one that you would expect to be for an organization name. So that's called farming. Romance scams, and there's been a couple of programs on this. One very sad program, which was a panorama around romance scams, and it's basically groups of criminals, usually from different countries across the world, trying to really focus on grooming and romance, and build up these relationships with no plans to ever meet. They're not actually the person that person thinks they're speaking to. And eventually they build up that relationship, and money starts being transferred for various different reasons. But again, it's something that sadly is increasing. Through the coronavirus, where this has got quite common as well, there have been cases where criminals have posed as nurses and care workers, and are preying and using that as a reason to kind of get very close to someone. So again, it's a big problem. And finally, impersonation of UK officials. So that's criminals impersonating like HMRC and council tax scams and things of that nature. Again, the council tax and HMRC ones are very popular and very common. So that's how it's broken down into 4 areas. So just for a little bit of audience participation, I can't see everyone who's on there, but if anyone wants to shout out, or you can write it down on the chat maybe, and Alice or Steve might be able to see it. But if you received this email in your inbox today, and this was written, it's probably a little bit extreme, but what things would maybe worry you, that you just want to shout out or point out on this email that would make you kind of think, oh, is this real?
The domain of the email address.
Yep, good. As I say, anyone just shout out anything that looks a little bit kind of strange?
Spelling errors.
Yep, spelling, good, and grammar errors. Anything else?
That they're asking you to give all your contact details, your name, address, and phone number. Yes,
that's good. So let's pick up on a few little things. So the inconsistent email address, which was mentioned, the URL and website links, which I said is very important to look at the URL and where that website is in case you're being farmed. Just another example, of someone that was having a lot of complaints with I think it was with Ryanair, and then received an email that looked exactly like it was from Ryanair, and because it was quite topical, there was an ongoing complaint going on. Immediately, this person just clicked on the link to give the details. So again, they are very clever how they pick up on a lot of things that are going on in your lives to then try and scam people. Poor spelling and grammar, which was mentioned. The pressure to respond. So usually the content of how it's written will kind of maybe think, well, that, you know, they're being very pushy, or there's a lot of pressure to respond. I'm just going to move my thing up a bit because I can see the ones at the bottom. So we said about the capital letters, the signature, even when it's saying at the top from Mrs. E. This example is based on Australia, but it's very, the whole content of it is very vague. And if we look at, and this is an email that went out recently from a scammer for using British Gas. So again, certain things with this is not how British Gas would write an email to our customers. Not far wrong, but it has picked up on our logo, which is again very, very accurate. But when you look at the email address it's come from, there's no welcoming salutation. The account actually wasn't hyperlinked. That's not one of our reference numbers, and the customer would be familiar today if they looked at that reference number. No explanation, very informal end. Dave Cohen, yes, is our managing director. So lots of little things in emails that it's important to pick up before you just click that button, because if you click that button to get your refund, and believe me, hundreds and thousands of customers are doing this, British Gas customers, through the scam emails, and we then have to go back to kind of assure them. It's sometimes very easy, as Steve said earlier, if you're in a rush and you just get an email and think, oh yeah, actually I am due a refund from British Gas. You click on that button. Don't actually look at the whole content of the email. So back to you, Steve.
Yeah, so we'll just run through now how you might spot a victim of crimes, a victim of scams. So this could be, you know, friends or family. It could be clients when you're on the talking to clients or customers over the phone or in the house. So postal scams, they might make regular trips to the post office or bank. Might have lots of scam mail in their home, including lots of post from companies abroad. Might be buying a large amount of stamps, obviously to respond and send checks and postal orders. Using an unusual amount of checkbooks. And again, with a lot of these sort of areas, the banks are getting quite savvy as well. So they would pick up on something like that if they found out one of their customers was using a lot of checkbooks. Have lots of beauty or food products around the home. They might have free gifts or lucky objects sent from scammers. So things like pendants and badges and items that are actually supposedly for the protection, which is quite ironic. And then telephone scams. So somebody may receive high volumes of calls a day. They might make regular payments over the phone each day or receive suspicious SMS text messages. They might feel that the people that are calling them are actually friends, as the scammers could be the only people they have regular contact with. And again, that's prevalent with isolation at the moment and COVID, and when you kind of look at, as I've said before, that age demographic. They might talk about a helpful caller who's helped them to resolve an issue, so things like fixing the computer or sorting out a bank issue. Or they might speak of fantastic investment opportunities that they've been given or become involved in. And then doorstep scams. So having work completed on the property or garden, which is of poor quality or takes a long time to complete. You might find they're agreeing to further unnecessary works at the property. They may actually become fearful of opening the door or going out just because they've been hounded by doorstep scammers, and may feel under pressure from those carrying out the work. Might actually make a large cash withdrawal to pay for the work, so rather than using a secure payment. And again, so that's so the criminals can't be traced. They will frog march the victim to the bank to get money out. So again, that's that cash thing, so there's no comeback on it. And then with online scams, may have received a suspicious or unexpected email asking them for personal details or banking information. So clicking on a link to open an attachment. talk about unexpected final demands or refunds from a UK official. So as Matt mentioned earlier on, such as things like the HMRC or local council. Might talk about a new online relationship where they're mostly having contact by telephone, email, or on the internet, and the person's actually in need of money. And again, that's how they groom them, because a lot of these romance scams, it comes down to things like, you know, they once they've befriended them, then they'll start talking about family members that need hospital treatment and things. And discover unexpected payments have been made from their account if you're sort of looking after somebody's affairs. And I guess a common thing for all the scams is that the victim may be actually experiencing financial hardship, which will prevent them from stocking the kitchen cupboards, heating the home, or paying bills as a result of spending money on scams or extortionate amounts of work through doorstep scams. And actually spending a lot of time on scams, because they become that drawn in and convinced that it's real, they start to neglect themselves or the home.
Cool.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Steve. So another little bit of interaction here. Again, just shout out, if looking at this picture, what might you think indicates that the person is a scam victim? And that's not the person's lying in the back garden there, in the picture. But what things in this picture do you think would indicate that they're potentially a victim of a scam?
Seem to be receiving a lot of bills or unsolicited mail.
Yeah, good. Lots of stuff coming through the door.
Items that they've received in boxes.
Yes, yeah. There's lots of like gifts and boxes around with which looks like well, it doesn't look very exciting, does it? But just free, kind of the free gifts.
It looks like they've been possibly victim of a romance scam. They're online, possibly lonely.
Yeah, good one. Find love on the laptop, and there's just one chair in there, so probably someone who's living alone, as you say, lonely and isolated, maybe.
Miss Julie saying not keeping up on the dishes. Yep, which is correct.
There's very little food in the cupboard, as far as you can see.
Yeah, empty cupboard.
The house has got damp, so they're maybe not keeping up to date with sort of bills and sort of looking after themselves.
Yeah, spot on. Yes, some good answers there. So this is obviously an extreme example, but all these things could be things, as Steve was saying, you would spot behavioural changes in victims, and that could be family, friends, or for us as being in people's homes. And we've gone through this with our Cs, our smart engineers, and smart installers, and they see a lot and they hear a lot, and so we're trying to kind of get them to educate them on lots of different things around safeguarding, but scams in particular. So there's a few things. I think you picked up on most of them. Obviously, somebody at the door. There's stamps and checkbooks on there as well. We mentioned the romance scams, the self-neglect. There's obviously a telephone there and a mobile phone. So again, when you have access to these channels, you can potentially be a victim. The low quality goods that Hannah mentioned, and isolation, and the mail. So as I said, the important part of this, maybe because people aren't talking about it, is trying to recognize potential victims. And as we said, anyone can be a victim. These criminals will target certain individuals and elderly customers, but they will try and scam anybody. And that, as I say, includes all of us. But we know from the work that we've done and the customers we talk to, and it led on from Dementia Friends, that we wanted to kind of align a lot of this work to the groups of customers that we talk to and that we're worried about, and are being targeted. But anyone can be a victim. We've just got one example that was shared with us from Trading Standards, and this particular scenario is happening every day to hundreds and hundreds of people. So this is Mr. G, and hopefully you'll be able to hear his brief story.
I started getting lots of post delivered to my house from around the world. I knew a lot of it was rubbish, but I thought the Aussie lottery ones, they were genuine, as I always pay the UK lottery. I started to send the money. It was only small amounts, £10, £15, always just these small amounts. The letters kept coming and I kept sending the money. I also started to get phone calls from the people who were from these lottery companies. They became my friends. I wanted my big win to pay for a back operation. One day I got a nice lady from Trading Standards came, and they looked at the letters and told me that they were nothing but scams. I didn't want to believe it because I really genuinely thought I was going to win. When they then sat and looked at it and I sat with them, I then realised I'd lost everything. I'd lost all my savings. I felt completely devastated. I'm not sure I'll ever recover. These people who do this are just ruthless criminals.
So yeah, that was Mr. G's story, and that picture, I think I'm right in saying that he's got another 3 rooms full of these chocolates and sweets, because he just kept thinking he was going to win and kept going, and that's a very common story and theme, and we pick up on a lot of things where our engineers can't get into homes. This is a difference to hoarding, but sometimes it could be something like this that they are involved in certain scams, and it's up to us to maybe try and ask some questions and get our customers talking to us a little bit more. So once you fall into a scam, there are consequences, of which Steve is going to talk through.
Yeah, and I think that this is why it's really vital, and this is why we run these sessions, that people do report scams, because when you look at the consequences of them, it's actually really sad and quite sickening. So people could attempt to or commit suicide. It will have a detrimental mental, physical and emotional health issues. So things like depression, distress, loss of enjoyment of daily activities. The person may be falling into debt because obviously the money's going elsewhere. Could be damaged relationships, especially if family and or friends try and fail to intervene because the victim is so convinced it's not a ruse. Repeat victimization, as Matt mentioned previously, so people fall onto this sucker list and will then start getting inundated with letters and telephone calls. And studies have actually proven that adults defrauding their own home are 2.5 times more likely to either die or to go into residential care than their non-defrauded neighbours within a year, which is a horrendous statistic. And other consequences could include things like shame and embarrassment and guilt. And I think you see that a lot when people are talking on the telly, when they've fallen victims to scams, that they actually feel that they've contributed to their own or others' victimisation and feel that it's their own fault, when it's not, because these criminals are getting cleverer and cleverer by the day. They might have strong emotional ties to the scammers, and therefore they might believe that the scammers are their friends. And actually, they might find it difficult to entangle themselves from the relationship, to get away from that relationship. Things like societal condemnation, so indifference and adverse stereotypes. So the attitude that some people have that victims of fraud actually deserve what they get as a result of their own greed and stupidity. And again, that's why it's so important that there's awareness, so people are talking about it to remove that stigma. The person may have self-doubt, shock, disbelief, anger, resentment, and a sense of betrayal, because again, if you've fallen victim to a criminal, then you could just go very insular around the whole situation. And then again, having that inability to trust easily, frustration with criminal justice professionals, and actually fear for financial security and independence. And again, this is just to recap, because I think we've covered quite a lot across the session so far. So scams are the product of organised predatory criminals, and it's really important to not forget that. They gain trust to exploit and steal money. So they will use befriending and grooming techniques, so they might appear to be legitimate and helpful. They might be all friendly and quite charming at first, But then that can turn on a knife edge and become quite persuasive and quite persistent. And especially if it's an individual that's living alone and isolated, they could become quite threatening, quite aggressive, and quite intimidating, to be fair, which then is forcing the victim to feel under pressure and feel intimidated. And the only way to get rid of them is to buy that product or give them the money or take out that service.
Well, thanks, Steve. So what can we do then? And this is focusing on maybe we'll lead up to the reporting side. So there is a campaign that is mainly run through the banks. I just need to move everyone's names again over there. And it's called Take 5, which is really just making sure you just take 5 minutes to think about what you're doing when you're not sure, and really just make sure that what you're talking about or getting involved in is not fraud or not a scam. So it's about what details. Well, basically, never disclose security details. Don't assume everyone is genuine. It's sad, the world we live in. There's a generation out there still that are very trustful. But we probably have, maybe COVID has changed a little bit about communities. I'll be honest, I think before COVID, we've lost a lot of that community spirit and neighborhood kind of in a lot of areas. And maybe COVID's brought that back a little bit more now. So, but with that, as we've said, there's a lot of criminals and fraud out there on the back of COVID as well. But you can't assume everyone is genuine. Don't ever be rushed into making a decision, and listen to your instincts, and most importantly, stay in control. And the bank really pushed this particular Take 5 campaign pretty much on an ongoing basis. The reason, again, that there is so much focus on this is the amount of money that the consumers are losing, 5 to 10 billion a year to scams, and it's a massive figure. And again, all these slides will be made available, and we'll talk about in a minute. Just me and Steve sending you more information if you want to, so you'll be able to email us directly, or Alice and Mike. But really, I'll go through these tips, and it builds on everything we've talked about. Of just, if someone knocks on your door and you're worried about saying no, and the whole road traders and distraction burglaries, as well as being very annoying, and it's the same with phone calls. I think not many people phone me on my landline, and usually when the landline does ring, it is a computerized voice saying I've been in an accident, or someone trying to sell me something. So the call blockers are out there, and there's one in particular called TrueCall. If you're worried about a loved one, a family member, the call blockers are really good, and TrueCall is a very good call blocker, because the only numbers that go in it are the trusted numbers that you actually put in. Everything else will go and be diverted away. So things like that are very important. Postal scams, we said, again, the Royal Mail do a hell of a lot now in actually stopping a lot of mail coming through our doors. So it's important, again, though, the stuff that does get past Royal Mail, you just, as Steve said, if you're not sure, you report it and put it in the bin. Keeping all your personal details safe, understanding the company that you're maybe talking to do some work, and the credentials. Online, not just around some of the things we've talked about, but basically your whole identity online. It's out there. There are other things that are kind of linked to fraud, but your settings on things like Facebook and other social media platforms, again, can be linked to when if someone's got hold of your address and you're saying you're abroad on holiday somewhere, then you could be targeted by burglars and things like that. So just be very careful and savvy online. It's a lot about trust as well, about talking to people, and most importantly, reporting a scam, which we'll talk about in a second. But as I say, anyone can be a victim, and it's important to report it and talk to somebody about it. And I did this, we've done a lot of these sessions to groups, and I did one recently for before COVID for an elderly seniors group. There's around 250. Pretty much went through the same thing as this. And at the end, there was a queue of probably around 100 of them queuing up to speak to me, all very worried because they had mobile phones, quite old mobile phones that were given to them by grandchildren or their children, more just to keep connected, or again, that generation might have a tablet purely for the use of using Skype or FaceTime and stuff like that. But being online in that digital world, they're going to get other things coming through. And a lot of them were just asking me about things they were getting through SMSs in particular. So, so yeah, I had a lot of questions, and a lot of them were actually honest and upfront with me about being a victim. And they could talk to me about it, but not to their son or daughter, because sometimes they've lost maybe money which would have been inheritance, and that whole embarrassment. So, so yeah, it's important to get people to talking about it and maybe pick up on some of those behavioural changes that Steve mentioned earlier that you might see in people, and not maybe in the past related to maybe that they've been scammed because they've changed the way that they're talking, or there's new friends in their lives. So reporting scams. I need to move my thing again. We've got a leaflet with all of this on, but basically it's important to start reporting these. Doesn't matter how small it is. Citizens Advice get involved in a lot of this, as well as the trading standards, but actual fraud are the key people to report frauds. Depending on the level of severity, you would then also obviously get the police involved in certain scams. But it's most of what we've talked about, and some of the things that we get through emails, phone calls, and rogue traders, you would report to action fraud. There's a lot of information out there online to help. From our perspective as British Gas, we have our own internal systems around phishing emails and obviously the distraction burglaries, of which the police often come to us to talk about, because they do a lot of work in the communities where they can get on board with these sessions and actually email a lot of the local communities there. And you don't need that one at the bottom, but we report a lot of our counter fraud stuff or fraud stuff to our financial crime at British Gas, and that's how important it is. That team's actually growing because sadly there are so many incidents that are being reported through to that team. That is the end. So I can't
music off, Matt.
I'm going to go back. That's it. So you are all now friends, friends against scams. And being a friend, we can send a certificate to show that you've been through this awareness course, and a leaflet. You can go online to friendsagainstscams.org. You can sign up, go through a lot of this again, and actually get more involved yourselves. Me and Steve are what are called scam champions, and you can be a scam ambassador and really get your organisations behind this and personalize it. We run a lot of these to British Gas employees, which is a very different session because we bring in a lot of the internal conversations that we have within our debt customer care team, our priority services team, and our field teams, where all of it is relevant in different ways because of the way that they communicate with customers. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can maybe see some more people. Gosh, there's lots of people
and me. Hi.
I can see you, Steve. So, so we've still got 15 minutes left, but conscious we wanted to finish a bit early so everyone can get ready for the pub quiz. But are there any questions or anything that anyone would like to talk about or share? Any stories? Because I think sharing, even if it's you got an email like me from the TV license people yesterday, the more people talk about things with colleagues, with friends and family, if they get that email, they will just delete it, as opposed to potentially, if you haven't talked about it, they might press the button that gives the bank details or let somebody into your house because you think it is someone who wants to read your meter.
I'd like to talk about one if that's okay.
Yes.
I very, very nearly got caught by an EE one the other year. Simple thing, just double check your details for me, please. And there I was, I went through the whole thing, put in all my financial information for my bank, absolutely everything. And just as I was about to press send, common sense hit me, thank goodness. And I was like, oh my goodness, as if you'd think an adult fully with it technologically wouldn't get caught. But I was seconds away from completing before I realised this was probably a scam. So it's so easy.
Yeah, because if you've so much going on in your life, or you know, other things might be distracting you. As Matt mentioned during that session, the person that had the issue with Ryanair, exactly the same happened because she'd just been on the phone and then got an email and stuff. So it is easily done. So it's great that you can share that. And again, it just gets a message out that anybody can be a victim.
So easy to be sucked in by. There's Inland Revenue do a good one as well, offering a nice little rebate, but I didn't get caught by that one.
Thanks for that.
Hi everyone. I'm Hannah, and I work for Citizens Advice Sunderland. We do see kind of clients coming through in relation to scams. But on a personal note, I had someone come knocking on the door who actually it turns up that they were pretending to be from a business that went into administration 4 years ago. So we Googled it and things, and we didn't fall victim, but it was just because there's quite a lot of elderly residents on our estate, and he was flyering and putting information through, and so I didn't want them to be, you know, targeted, as it were. And I had the name that he was using, and I had all of that, the leaflet that he was using. But when I went onto the Action Fraud website to then report it, I could only do it if there was actually a victim. And because I wasn't a victim, I was just aware of it, I didn't know how to report it. So is there a specific, because I went online and tried to do it, but is there a specific way of, I suppose, identifying scams as opposed to showing it from a victim's perspective? Because there wasn't a victim as such.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. Yeah, so I think it's something we can take back to them. But yeah, so it's more highlighting the different types of scams and building up a bit of a kind of resource hub, really, to let people know about certain things that are there. It's a good point about reporting it, because you don't necessarily, and it's like a bit of a hotline, really. You don't have to be a victim. You just want to report, as Yvonne got very, very close to that. So nearly a victim, but you want to spread the news that there is stuff going on with EE as an example. Because the more stories we have and the more things we collect from our people, we do push them through, mainly more to trading standards. So maybe that's a different route, because they can then use their teams and stuff to get that out there, especially through Twitter and social media, of warning people.
Yeah, because I tried to do it as a witness, because you can kind of say whether you're a victim, whether you're a witness of a scam or fraud or a crime. But the issue is that I didn't fit into any of those allocations. I was not a victim, but I also wasn't a witness to fraud. It was just that I know that fraud will then happen if someone else falls victim. So it's just as opposed to maybe if there is a way of flagging it. I know there's so many, and the emphasis should be rightly on helping people who have been scammed and reporting that to stop them. But equally, if you don't stop people before it happens, do you know what I mean? It's not going to be able to be stopped. So if there's any way of being able to have it where you can just kind of highlight, potential scams and things that then could be investigated. I know that there is an email system that you can do. You can forward emails that you think are potentially suspicious. So there is a way of being able to do it for emails. However, for the kind of doorstep road builders or potentially mail and things like that, just where there's a take a photo, send it on, because we might be able to stop other people from getting scammed that way too, potentially.
Yeah, very good point. Thank you.
I've got a quick one if we've got time.
Yeah.
No.
So we have a lot at NEA. Well, I feel I do specifically. And I did fall victim of an email that looked like it came from our CEO, Adam, asking for Google vouchers. I think they were for each of our members of SMT. So it seemed legit. It was coming up to Christmas. I am very gullible as a person anyway. So I went ahead, said, yes, not a problem. When would you like these by? Got a deadline of 2 p.m. So I thought, great, I'll go on my lunch. And it was only then when I turned around to my colleagues and said, where do I get Google vouchers from? And then we started fishing into it. And the only way we could tell that it was a scam was when we clicked on the email contact. Underneath, it was from the king of a country in Africa. and then we were like, I don't think that's legit. So we've had a lot like that, and now what I do is I always get my emails double checked if I'm a bit unsure.
Yeah, that's the best thing to do. As I say, yeah, and the hackers that can get into other people's systems. So a colleague at British Gas had a conservatory, and the company that built the conservatory, their systems had got hacked into. So his details had been taken. Then they created an email asking for payment, giving a different bank account. He was expecting that email for payment, and paid for the conservatory to this bank account from the scammers. So it gets complicated then, because who's right or wrong? Obviously the company, because they were breached and their data, but again, you don't know where it's coming from. So some of the examples we've heard whilst doing these sessions, and I think there's a message from Yvonne that we're more than happy to talk to anybody, Yvonne. So about this and run these sessions. We're doing it for Clarion Housing Association in 2 weeks' time for all of their teams, and so we love talking about this and everything that we do. So, there's Yvonne there. I can see you now. Yeah,
yeah.
Thank
you.
Yeah, drop me an email, and this is we haven't done it through Teams. We've done it twice actually through Teams, because since COVID. Because it is much more fun if we're all in a room, and it's a lot more interactive. We had to take a few things out, and you get together in little groups and huddles and do more activities. But obviously in the current climate, unless there's only 6 of us in a room, then yeah, we can do it over Teams and just.
Thank
just
you. Where would I find your email address? Is it on your website?
It's I think I don't know, Alice, if when all this gets sent out or.
I can send it on to you, Yvonne. That's not a problem.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
It's literally matt.baker@britishgas.co.uk. So, and it's the same. No, actually, I won't give yours, Steve, because you've got numbers and stuff in yours. But
I'm just thinking now that you're going to get scammed.
Yeah. So, but matt.baker@britishgas.co.uk. Cool. And yes, anyone else like to share anything or any other questions? Or you're all itching to go and get an alcoholic drink and get ready for the quiz? I think we're allowed to drink in the quiz. There's me being naughty saying you can, but during the business thing. But
no, that's great. Thanks, Matt and Steve, for that session. I'm sure everybody found it really useful. If you are staying for the quiz, by all means go and get yourself a drink and some bar snacks. And that will start at 4:30. Thanks again. If you want to drop either myself or one of the comms team an email with regards to this session, then please do, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. And thank you very much for joining us today.
Great. Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Alice.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.